Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to our online Kashmir Cultural Heritage Awareness Series. Today is our 58th week, and the topic today is Kashmir, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow by Sri Jeevan Zutshi. As always, we are very pleased. Sri Ashok Subramaniam is joining us from San Jose, California. I think you are from Santa Clara today. Over to you, Ashok ji.
Today I'm going to sing a small verse from Stuti Sadakam of Mukha Pachisati. पांडित्यं परमेश्वरि स्तुति विधौ पांडित्यं परमेश्वरि स्तुति विधौ नैवाश्रयन्ते गिरा वैरिञ्जान्यपि कुम्भनानि विकलगर्वाणि सर्वाणि ते स्तोतुं त्वां परिफुल्लनील दलिन श्यामाक्षी कामाक्षी वाचाली कुरुते तथापि नितरां त्वत्पाद सेवादरः. Namaste.
Thank you, Ashok ji. It has been a pleasure always having you with us.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. And Ashok usually stays with us during the program, but today I think he has to leave.
I have to drop my daughter for a concert. She's going to Penn State, so I have to leave in about 5 minutes. I just wanted to sing this and leave. Namaste ji.
Thank you so much for joining. And
yeah, I'll get to see this in the recording. Thank you.
All right, sir.
We'll talk to you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. We thank Kanji Mutt for our ongoing Kashmir initiatives. Offer our Namaskaram to His Holiness Sri Shankara Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal. Kanji Mutt, as we know, has always been in the forefront, working with the sole aim of national integration, spiritual enlightenment, and preserving the uniqueness of Kashmir, as Kashmir is our cultural heritage. We are very pleased to welcome Sri Jeevan Zutshi, joining us from Fremont, California, early Saturday morning live. Jeevanji, an Indian-American activist and founder of the Indo-American Community Federation, was born in Kashmir. Jeevan has been holding very high-profile International Symposia in California since 1992 to expose the evils and dangers of terrorism and to forge friendships between different religious groups from the Indian subcontinent. Jeevanji is a graduate civil engineer, a practicing realtor and property manager, expert in commercial real estate and lending. As founder of International Kashmir Federation, IAKF, and Indo-American Community Federation, IACF, Jeevan Zutshi became an example for Indo-Americans to become part and parcel of mainstream America. That has been the mission of IACF and IAKF. Through his ongoing work, Jeevanji continues to prove his mettle, both as a productive and progressive member and leader of his community. Jeevan Zutshi has written 2 books. The first book, The Last Smile, A Father's Love Story, highlighted the dangers of OTC, that's over-the-counter dietary supplements, and with his second book seeks to point out the many social vices, visible and invisible, yet on trial, fighting the invisible and visible enemies. Now, Jeevanji made an award-winning film that won 8 awards at major international film festivals and was nominated for 3 more. This included winning the prestigious Best Features at Burbank International Film Festival 2017. The Last Smile is 87 minutes long independent film presented by Amit Zutshi Foundation, highlighting the dangers of over-the-counter supplements and the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry involved in marketing these life-threatening products, and one that remains totally unregulated by the FDA. The film has been directed by Shanki Srinivasan and has gone from continent to continent. Let me share a slide on this. I have not discussed this with Jeevanji, nor he mentioned anything about it. While searching the internet, I found this and I thought it would be a great tribute to the foundation and in memory of his son. So, Jeevanji, with your permission, I just want to mention about this Last Smile.
Please.
The brief story tells the story of father's journey from growing up in conflict-torn Kashmir, India, to build a prosperous life in America. He tells a poignant story of losing his son, Amit, who was in the beginning of a promising career, excited about the political future of this country, and who took a great interest in living a health-conscious lifestyle before he died suddenly at the age of 30. While going through your profile, somehow I landed in this, and I thought we should say a few words, and I'm sure you will mention about this.
Thank you. Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Jeevanji.
Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. And as we talk about Kashmir today, we'll talk about some history. We'll talk about what's happening presently. And we'll just peek into the future. As we all know, ancient Kashmir was home to a majority Hindu and Buddhist population. And it was for thousands of years and was renowned as a center for Hindu and Buddhist learning. Islamic invaders from Central Asia took control in the 14th century. Under Islamic rule, Hindus faced periods of persecution, resulting in mass migrations from the region roughly once a century until the late 1700s. In the early 1800s, Sikh rulers controlled the region, and it was followed by a Hindu dynasty from the mid-1800s through 1947. Regarding the independence movement, some Kashmiris say that Kashmir was always independent. As has been very correctly narrated, that this is historically incorrect. Kashmir was only independent till 1587, when the last independent ruler, Yusuf Shah Chak, was deposed and exiled by Mughal Emperor Akbar, who incorporated Kashmir into the Mughal Empire. Later, it passed under Afghan, Sikh, and Dogra rule, and ultimately came under the British. Maharaja Hari Singh was only nominally independent, but like other princely states in India, the real ruler of Kashmir was the British, who had their army there. When the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir became part of the Republic of India in 1947, shortly thereafter, Pakistani armed forces and Pashtun tribesmen invaded the area. forcing the largest Kashmiri political party to approve the accession. Indian forces were deployed to counter the attacks by Pakistan. In 1948, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 47 requiring all Pakistani military personnel to be withdrawn from the region before a plebiscite, which would have confirmed the people's wishes to join India. Instead, Pakistan increased its military presence and no plebiscite was held. At the time of partition, the new nation state of Pakistan, a place created for Muslims, claimed that Kashmir was an unfinished task of division. The founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, described Kashmir as an unfinished task of division. And then Bhutto took it further by proclaiming a 1,000-year war with India. If this was not enough, General Ziaul Haq, his doctrine of 1,000 cuts to bleed India, fostered and nurtured separatism, terrorism, and fundamentalism, thus making Kashmir what it is today. Consequently, Pakistan became a player by supporting this deep-seated separatist agitation with finance, training, and alleged boots on the ground. To completely Islamize Kashmir, Pakistan was able to capitalize on this by financing, arming, and training militant groups across the border. And ethnic cleansing of the Kashmiri Pandits was undertaken on January 19, 1990. Many secular Muslims and intellectuals who did not become part of this were also killed. Pakistan's proxy war in Kashmir began in 1989. An insurgency sponsored by Pakistan's military and intelligence service engulfed the Kashmir Valley. Former Pakistani ambassador to the US, his name was Hussain Haqqani, he said the ISI-supported jihad in Kashmir was rooted in the ideology of Pakistani Islamists, carefully nurtured for decades by the Pakistani military. Since then, thousands of civilians have been killed in militant-related violence. 32 years is a huge time span in one's life. And if it is a witness to complete demographic change and innumerable loss of lives in a region, then experiences are too traumatizing to be explainable through words. Both the Kashmiri Muslims and Pandits, Kashmiri Hindus are also called Pandits or Kashmiri Brahmins, and they originally lived in the Kashmir Valley before Muslim influence in the region. So anyway, they lived in India, have been the victims of kind of a political economy that puts humanity to shame. Political economy as engineered by the Muslim leadership without any political response from the Pandits who lacked any community leadership. Both the communities have immensely suffered, each one for its own reason, one inflicted and the other consciously ingrained. The inflicted one being Indian agent, for political discourse, and kafir, religious discourse, wherein fitted the Pandit community and the consciously ingrained one being the political aim of freeing Kashmir from the so-called subjugation of India, wherein fitted the Muslims. Through the loudspeakers of mosques, militants screamed words of hate for minorities. Convert, leave, or die. And leave your women behind and send the men off were popular slogans. In the weeks following, leaflets were posted on the doors of Kashmiri Hindus asking for their immediate departure from the valley or face the consequences. And this innocent Kashmiri who was a firm believer of harmony and composite culture, was turned into a scapegoat of circumstances by the stooges and pawns of the other country. Thus, the compassionate shoulders of Kashmiris, which always proved helpful in giving shoulder to the funerals of Kashmiri Pandit brethren in the times of grief and sorrow, were actually misused for chiding and haunting them. In a way, the same shoulders of solidarity and help were defamed and literally used by the nefarious agents for their gains. A prosperous middle class community had overnight become a slum dweller. A few stayed back, though, not confident enough to face the unknown world, anticipating death and rape anytime sooner or later. And they were not to be proved wrong. Thus, January 19th, 1990, got etched in the history as the day of forced exodus of the Pandits from a place of their heritage, and the day when the valley was cleansed of its aboriginals. Also, alas, the beautiful valley of Kashmir became a bed of Islamic terrorism, and the campaign of intimidation and harassment worsened in the late 80s, with the growing influence of the straight-laced interpretation of Islam propagated through Wahhabism. A version of Islam was created where supporting those who are fighting in the path of Allah were considered as fighters, giving birth to the concept of mujahideen. This is a pre-planned, meditated manner by adversaries like Pakistan and terror groups across the world. Lately, conflicts in Middle East and Afghanistan, religious radicalization has added another worrying dimension to it. The current generation of Kashmiris has been brought up under an environment of strife between the religious and political narratives, leading to violence by terrorists. Over the years, through a planned lecture series at places of worship, through books, and through pre-planned one-page pamphlets, a version of religion that is twisted enough to immune a human being to his natural tendencies of mercy, of goodness, is converted into a killer. Terrorism in Kashmir is a combination of societal religious causes. There is an increased influence of religious indoctrination, which is feeding into the narrative of victimhood, which is further used by terrorist groups to recruit them into various groups. Social media and internet have provided access to both education and propaganda. Young, vulnerable minds have become a victim of social media propaganda. While talking about the history, I'll be amiss if I don't touch the subject of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And as you all know, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. It is the area which has been used. It's a breeding ground, actually. That's where all the training camps and everything else that has happened in Kashmir, that's where it was happening from. And it's our part. It's a part of Kashmir. It's in the western part. If you look at the map of India and Kashmir, it is in the west, immediate west of Kashmir. And, it is actually abbreviated as Azad J&K. They call it Azad, means free. And it's a region administered by Pakistan as a nominally self-governing entity and constituting the western portion of the larger Kashmir region, which has been the subject of a dispute between India and Pakistan since 1947. Quickly, I wish to tell you that Pakistan occupied Kashmir is divided into two parts. One is the so-called Azad Kashmir, which is not actually Azad. Azad means free. And the second part is Gilgit-Baltistan, which used to be referred to as northern areas till August 2009. India controls approximately 55% of the land area of the region. That includes Jammu, the Kashmir Valley, most of Ladakh, the Siachen Glacier, and 70% of its population. Pakistan controls approximately 30% of the land. That includes the so-called Azad Kashmir and Gilgit and Baltistan. And China controls the remaining 15% of the land. Pakistan occupied Kashmir is that part of the Jammu and Kashmir, India, which was invaded by Pakistan in 1947. Remember, I just initially talked about the tribal war in 1947. So that is when, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. It is that part which was also invaded. The region is referred by the United Nations and other international organizations as Pakistani-controlled Kashmir. And it was renamed as Pakistan-occupied Jammu Kashmir by the Modi government. So, the most important step taken by the government about 3 years back, we're now moving into the present. And thanks to the action that was taken by the Modi government 3 years back, it has really shaped the present and also will shape the future, which is the removal of Article 370. The temporary Articles 370 and 35A, they were highly discriminatory against all indigenous Kashmiri minorities. All of them, not only Pandits, but it was Sufi Muslims, Shia Muslims, Ahmadi Muslims, Dalits, Gujars, and of course, Kashmiri Sikhs and Buddhists, including the Pandits. Only the majority Sunni Muslims were privileged to benefit from this provision. They were highly discriminatory against all indigenous minorities. The removal of these articles has helped curtail terrorism in the valley and empower women, as more progressive laws will apply to them equally with the rest of the country. They allowed a breeding ground for armed violence in Jammu and Kashmir. And unfortunately, a group of propaganda mongers and vested interests, including the former political parties, they're still continuing to spread misinformation and confusion about the abrogation of these provisions. Another very important step that is being taken at present is educating young Muslims to combat the increased influence of religious indoctrination. They are being told that Hukukul ul Abad, which means social responsibility, always took precedence over the Hukukul Allah, which means the religious responsibility. One cannot fulfill religious obligations without fulfilling obligations to fellow humans in the first instance. There's a strong need to continue promoting pluralism in the state so that all communities can live together, as they did before Pakistani trained militants forced Kashmiri Pandits to leave Kashmir Valley. Intra-Kashmiri dialogue, exchanging programs of students, writers, artists to offer their strengths in all the regions will definitely help in reconnecting and reintegrating hearts and minds of the people. Another recommendation is of inclusion of teachings of Lal Ded, Sheikh Nuruddin, and other Sufi scholars, as well as key Vedic and Buddhist texts, as are other recommendations like promotion of art, culture, and modernizing libraries by providing internet connectivity and modern education aids to turn children into a productive asset for the community. Finally, we see curtail of terrorism in the valley. I'm very sure most of you were so familiar with the stone pelters. I mean, every day you would hear about stone pelters throwing stones on the army, on public, anywhere. It was such a mess. But after Article 370 and 35A were removed, you don't hear that anymore. So the terrorism has definitely been curtailed. Proactive measures of added security, restrictions, and internet regulation placed by the government of India are crucial to countering terrorism and preventing the loss of civilian lives by militant groups, to give the community an opportunity to work on creating a peaceful and plural society. The government and the civil society, they must continue this effort, and they must continue to strive to let the citizens create harmony and live within the confines of law. And that's one big problem in that part of the world. There's lawlessness, there's no law. The numbers of sane voices among the majority community of Kashmir, who are truly secular and not pseudo-secular, who don't support such Nizam-e-Mustafa movement, is now on the rise, thanks to the efforts and policies of the current government. Let their voices not be curbed by the religious bigots. Through constant education, their numbers must continue to increase exponentially. No culture can survive if it is uprooted from its place of origin. But, we do understand that healing won't happen unless there is a genuine remorse displaced by the Muslims of the valley, which is unfortunately not forthcoming. The Ghazwa-e-Hind agenda. So that is something that is a tough one. And our bigger problem for many years has been dealing with the anti-India extremists. And we have no dearth of them in the foreign countries. Here in the United States of America, where I am residing, we have been fighting anti-India elements for decades. Now it has resulted in vandalizing of temples and attacking people of Hindu faith. So we're facing quite a bit of problems. But fortunately, we have many groups which are fighting this. As of this week, we have been deeply concerned and alarmed at the ongoing violence in United Kingdom, Birmingham and Leicester, in which a large number of Hindus of Leicester, their places of worship, their cultural and religious symbols have been wantonly targeted and damaged by Islamic extremists and hoodlums. These violent, hateful, and extremist acts are entirely unidirectional and unilateral. However, a strong but false narrative is being constructed that it is the Hindus of that area who triggered this wanton violence and are responsible for the same. Several Hindus have been assaulted, and some of them, while we are talking right now, they have been admitted to the hospitals. So UK is a mess. Numerous Hindu places of worship in Leicester have been violated and desecrated. In fact, violent protest has been held near a very prominent Hindu religious and cultural center in Birmingham. Hindus are being terrorized to remove symbols of their heritage, traditions, culture, and religion, and a few Leicester Hindus had out of fear to comply. Many houses and properties of Hindus have been damaged. Many Hindus living in the impacted area have not sent their kids to school for several days now. Nothing of this sort has happened to Muslims, Islamic symbols, or places of worship. This reminds me of Kashmir. And it is a similar situation. I remember when we were growing up, things were not that bad as they became later on. But this was, something, it would happen once in a while, it would happen. The same thing that you see what's happening in the UK, the same thing would happen. And I remember we wouldn't go to school for days because of the danger. So unfortunately, it's something that the history is repeating itself constantly. And it's a very, very tough job, to deal with it. And curb this terrorism. I mean, UK Hindus, like we in America, we constitute a minuscule of the population. But, like here in America or in so many other countries outside India, we have contributed significantly to the adopted homeland, economically, culturally, and educationally. Now, coming to the UK Hindus, they are self-employed, in this area that we were talking about. And they have been providing jobs to others. I will recall the Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's statement, late Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. She stated in a public event, she said, while she was addressing, Hindus, she said, "You have taught us in this country so much about the family, and we must continually keep in mind that you are a great asset to the United Kingdom." Now, the same place you see today what is happening. And Hindus are being blamed for what's happening. That is the most unfortunate thing. And unfortunately, the local police and administration has been lax and irresolute in culling such violence. Leicester Hindus, Birmingham Hindus have been subject to violence and intimidation continuously since September 4, 2022. And UK government should not view the recent Leicester riots as a one-off event. These riots are a part of continuum. They arise from an ideology of hate, aggression, and violence. The riots are merely the most recent manifestation of Islamic extremism, which has hurt UK and other countries over the last several decades. I would have gone back and said several centuries. Earlier acts included the London metro bombings, the 2017 London Bridge attack, and the deadly stabbing near London Bridge in 2019. We haven't forgotten that. All of these acts have been inspired by extremists and violent ideologies. Hindus didn't do it. So why are you blaming Hindus right now that they incited this? In the US, we're quite organized to combat these hate mongers and have made the lawmakers aware of this disinformation campaign by the enemies of India. Unfortunately, sometimes, most of the times, political parties also have their own agendas. And it's very difficult, very, very, very hard to break through that. But, our effort has to be in the direction of educating the policymakers and trying to tell them that, hey, look, this is not something that's happening only in India or in Kashmir. I mean, don't forget 9/11, how they penetrated through your hearts and soul. So some of these politicians are understanding, and our efforts are continuing. And I'm very sure that, God willing, we'll have a great future. India is destined to be at the top, and we'll continue to pray that things go in that direction. I'm very grateful to you for listening to me this morning, and I thank you very, very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Jeevanji. That is a great summary, and you finally brought everything to the future. Few points from your presentation. You talked about Hindus are blamed. If you open New York Times, the way they write is Hindu militants. I hope you're reading that. Every time New York Times writes, it's always Hindu militants, not
Hindu
they can't write
militants.
Hindus. Where
Right.
do you see Hindu militants? I don't know. Hindus wearing all this bulletproof and fighting. There is no such thing. That is how the media gives a narrative about Hindus, Hindu militants. I don't know where
Right.
they got that term. And secondly, you talked about religious obligations. Obviously, that is totally against peaceful coexistence, right?
Right.
How do we handle this situation? This peaceful coexistence, tolerance. This is what I hear from most of the talks, most of the tolerance, friendship, camaraderie, all those things.
Right.
It's very common. Like you mentioned, Hindus are very, very tolerant. Like, see what is happening in UK and the USA. Hindus are not to be involved in any of this.
They never do what you see the other people doing. Hindus never do that. It's a deep-seated issue, and I really don't know. I mean, if you turn the pages of history and go back hundreds of years, I mean, Yusuf Shah Chak or all these guys, they didn't do anything that's not really being done now. I mean, it just seems to be a continuum. It's just the same thing which is happening over and over again. Beheading, raping, killing. I mean, which Hindu ever has done that? So I think it's a very
No,
difficult.
to the extent we see that violence you mentioned about UK, that continued or the way it is spreading, it will never happen in the US, right? US will
No.
put down all this.
Well, we don't know. It could. It could, where nobody is immune to anything. I mean, it could, because the way they are organizing themselves, the way they're trying to indoctrinate here also in this country, and the politicians and policymakers, the lawmakers, the way they are being educated about all the wrong, the false narratives. And at the same time, you have some hate mongers now. Like there were some recent incidents where some women were shouted at and asked to leave the country and ridiculed, and they talk very, very negatively about Hinduism. even without knowing what Hinduism is all about. I mean, it's just like Hindus, you know. And now another thing is Hindutva. Now the both things, they are lumping it together. And they're trying to blame the present government in India. They're saying that, it's a genocidal government. I mean, they're killing the minorities, they're killing Dalits, they're killing, Muslims. And the way they have created this narrative, I mean, it is very difficult to go and tell these guys that, hey, this is not right. This is wrong. This is a false accusation. No one in India is being butchered. I mean, if they are a minority. In fact, Muslims in India, I think they're treated better than Hindus. I mean, look at Kashmiri Hindus. They're still, wandering around. They haven't yet been able to find a place back in Kashmir. But Muslims, are not really, they're fine. They're living in Kashmir, they're living in India, they're living in other parts of India, they're doing businesses. You go to any hotel, major hotel, and you will see a Kashmiri Muslim, selling his shawls and carpets and stuff like that. And they have no danger of getting, butchered or anything. They're fine. It can only happen in a country like India. But unfortunately, the way the country is being projected, especially outside India, it's very heartbreaking. But, we also have to keep on working very hard to make these people understand and make them understand about the history and about, what has been happening. And I'm very sure that, as I said, our present government is definitely very strong. And I have to publicly applaud our Prime Minister Modi ji. I mean, to me, I think he's just like an avatar, in this, in this age. I think he's an avatar. He's a very strong man. I mean, he was accused. He has been always they have tried to bully him. I mean, remember Gujarat and the same country, America. He could not come to America. They were the same people. They were the same people, believe me. They were working overnight to make sure that Modi ji, he is defamed and accused, in spite of the courts, in spite of, that it was proved that he had done absolutely nothing wrong. But, the same country where they said that he cannot enter, he was the most honored Prime Minister of any other country.
Yeah, I remember he was on a video conferencing call that time, right?
Yes.
You couldn't get.
No, he could not. I remember so many of us worked very hard to convince the members of Congress. And I still remember our wonderful, other Hindu groups and secular is a bad term now. So our other, peace-loving Hindus, we had meetings with members of Congress and we tried to convince them. But as I said, sometimes it's a political kind of, whatever you tell them, it does not sink in. That's what they had decided and that's what they did. But the beauty of the whole thing is that same Modi ji, he drew the highest number of, in Houston, if you remember.
Yeah,
I was also there. And it was such spectacular, worth seeing. I mean, I'll never forget that day when Modi ji came on the stage and he spoke. and there were so many people there. I think there probably were 50,000 people. And no other prime minister gets this kind of welcome.
Yes.
So
I think President flew all the way to receive him there, right?
all the way from so many states, so many countries, people came to just see him. And it's because of his, not only his personal attributes, not only his personal charisma, but it's also the policies. I mean, he's a strong man, and that's what is bothering some of these people. That is what is bothering them. That why is he so strong?
We will take one question for you. Jeevanji, can you suggest some measures to restore normalcy in Kashmir and subsequently pundits to live without fear? I think you were mentioning things are improving. This is from Durrani ji. Durrani was one of our speakers a few weeks ago.
Okay. It's a beautiful question. It's on everyone's mind. But I can assure you that, we have been so closely in touch with what has been happening in the past, decades, especially in the past 33 years. What is happening now, if we follow the same path, which will be followed, I think Kashmir will become a safer place. It is already safe. They had record number of tourists, this year, as we all know, that there were so many flights a day that people could not even fly. They could not even get a flight. And I personally also know so many people who have been traveling. You just had this, the theater, cinema, that theater also was inaugurated. And so many things are happening now, which will definitely lead to a much safer place. And I'm very sure that only we have to follow the same path that has been charted out, that has been created by our Prime Minister Modi ji and his government. If we keep on following that without being cynical, without being skeptical, without doubting anyone, everything will happen. And I'm also very sure that Kashmiri Pandits, I mean, even today, I'm sure they can move. I don't see a problem. I do understand that, unfortunately, our enemies who do not want that to happen, they'll always try to create some commotion, like we saw few killings, in the past few months when some Kashmiri Pandits were killed. And it was a deliberate act, just to kind of show that, hey, things are not normal here. And even though that's not true, I think things have definitely become very normal. You don't see any stone pelter. You don't hear of those idiots anymore. And the corrupt people who essentially destroyed Kashmir in the past 70 years, they're also now, they have been sidelined. And many things are happening. To answer Mr. Durrani's question, I think let's be very positive. Let's keep faith. Let's work with the present government and help them, support them. I'm sure that we'll definitely see a very safe Kashmir back again. I mean, unfortunately, the whole world has become a mess these days. I mean, look what's happening in the UK. What's happening even in America. We had the solitary, some of these things which happened, but, these things suddenly become, like in Kashmir, suddenly they become an eyesore. And So we have to keep on working, but we have to also, as a civil society, I mean, we have to support the government. If we expect, the government or our prime minister, he has a magic wand and he's going to be, doing things on his own, that's not going to happen. We have to show faith, trust, work with them, and educate the legislators, policymakers, and I'm very sure that safety will return.
One of our speakers who appeared in our program, he talked about the importance of temple tourism. He said he made a wonderful presentation. Giridhar Mamidi will also appear in our program again. He covered quite a lot of temples that we are not seen or heard of. And he said people should start visiting Kashmir to these temples, even though some of them are in ruins. It must have been places of worship at some point, part of Kashi and other pilgrim centers. So we are also working with Jeshta Temple, one Bharat Bhushan Bhatt, working on a tour program for about 10 days. So people can go and stay there and cover a few temples. So we have to keep, this momentum going, start visiting Kashmir. Very few Kashmiri Pandits I talked to have been to Kashmir in the recent past. And they tell me that if you go, you can come back. It's not sure for us. I don't think that's the case
The you
anymore.
know I don't think that's not really there's a I don't blame them. I mean, there's a lot of fear, and looking at the past, what was done, I'm sure even I would be very skeptical if I have to take a trip or something. But honestly, we just had a Kashmiri camp. It's an event that happens every year. Our overseas Kashmiris have an association, and they have two camps, one on the east coast and one on the west coast. So I just attended the west coast camp, and I was so delighted to see some of the younger Kashmiris who had gone to Kashmir this year. And I said, "Where did you go? Which places did you visit?" And they said, "Well, everything was normal for us. Nobody ever looked at us." See, I mean, you have to also understand that whatever happened in 1989 and for several years after 1989, 90, it has left that indelible mark on the minds of people. I mean, it was terrible. It's terrible. They raped and killed and really forced everyone to leave the valley. Now to come out of that shock, it will take time. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that Kashmir is completely safe. I mean, it's not. Things can happen. It all depends on, what's happening on that particular day. But as tourists, as people visiting, going to even to their temples and stuff, I don't think they have any problem, as long as you don't just go and start buying property and go back and start living in Kashmir. I think that's something also that we have to keep in mind, that they don't see you as a threat if you are going as a tourist, because again, they're earning money, it's revenue for them, especially after the pandemic. They love to see that people come and visit, and they don't care whether it's a Kashmiri Pandit or anyone else. But I'm very sure it will be a problem if Kashmiris suddenly see themselves moving back to Kashmir and buying homes and doing this. That is to be seen.
No, that has to happen one day, no?
Yeah, it's going to be a threat, and they will suddenly feel that I don't know who is they here in this case. I still am not so sure about the percentage of locals who wouldn't want that to happen, I really don't know. It's definitely a question always in my mind, because I know Pakistan has really made a mess of that area. When we were growing up, the situation was not. It was not what we see, right now. What we have been seeing in the past few decades, it was not like that. You had that enmity, the Hindus and Muslims, they lived together, and they were like one family. I must say that. I remember in 1947 when these tribals, they came and they wanted to take this. Pakistan wanted to take Kashmir over. My father was a young man, 24, 25 years old, and he was saved by his own servants and other people. I mean, he was a landowner, so he had lots of these Muslims who were working on his lands. And they saved him, actually. But again, I'll tell you, the unfortunate thing here, which will tell us a lot about, what's happening. It was one mullah in the neighborhood. When these tribals came, and they came to our lands, and they said, "Where is Kafir?" Because somebody had, informed them that there's a rich guy, he's a landlord in this town, and he was also just married. So there's a lot of gold, a lot of things which he has in his home. So they came basically to take all those things and kill the pundits. The servants, they took my father, and he was in some very safe area somewhere, hiding. And when these tribals now were ready to leave, and they said, "Oh, okay, the Kafir has fled. He's not here. He's gone." And they are ready to leave. A mullah came and informed them that my father is in hiding and he is still there. With the result, they almost tried to kill a couple of those head servants, who were the kind of, you can say, managers. And they tried desperately to look for my father. So the contrast is right here. I mean, here you have some good people, some peace-loving people. And here you have these mullahs. And this mullah, he represents a group of people who we have seen have been creating all this trouble in the valley. And now who brought the worst out of these mullahs? Pakistan, Ziaul Haq. The madrasas, they made use of these elements, and they made use of religion and created this mayhem. So I think, to answer again the question that one gentleman listened, I think if we are somehow able to, and it may happen in the future, if we try to make sure that these mullahs are not there anymore, or they are somehow you change their ideology, and you educate the younger people and get rid of the madrasas, and, as I said, take over Pakistan occupied Kashmir. It's a breeding ground. Pakistan has been using it for training camps and everything. And I'm very sure, I'm just a very ordinary human being who is just talking, but I'm very sure that our Prime Minister Modi ji will definitely make these things happen, just the same way that he realized that it was Article 370 and 35A which were coming in the way of, doing all these wonderful things which are happening today. Same way, I'm very sure he has a plan. And the day we take over our the Kashmir, which has been occupied by Pakistan, and the things which are happening right now, I'm very sure that the mullah culture will be completely eradicated, and we'll have sanity will prevail.
Anyway, that is a good insight into POK, sorry, POJK.
POJ.
So,
Yes, it's not POK anymore. It's POJK.
so thank you for extensive insights into the territory and sharing your knowledge on this part of the world, and also suggesting that things are getting better. Not everyone agrees with you, but it is a fact that this, like you mentioned, the stone pelting and all, it's gone. Those street fights and all those are gone. Hopefully, like Durani ji was asking, normalcy would return. And we hope to see more Kashmiri Pandits returning to the valley and promoting religious tourism and promoting all the ceremonies, religious ceremonies that we all used to do once.
There are a lot of wonderful people in Kashmir, who are working on the temples and even in POK. I mean,
Sharda.
we have some Kashmiri Pandits who are even reviving, all those that old culture and everything. And I'm very, very positive. We have to stay positive. But again, I'll repeat myself. We have to, as a civil society, we have to work. We have to, governments cannot do anything on their own. And Kashmiri Pandits also, one last message, they have to come together now, finally. I mean, I do understand that it's an educated community. And when you have 100% literacy rate, I mean, it makes you individualistic. I mean, it's like, I know everything. I feel Jeevan Zutshi knows everything. And the other Kashmiri Pandit doesn't know. So that mindset, we have to come out of that and accept the leadership and, to come together as a community and focus on the mission, focus on what we are trying to achieve, and not be very cynical about some of the things which we suddenly might feel are not going, the way we want them to go. I mean, I'm very sure. I remember when we met Modi ji in Houston. I mean, these were his words. He said, "आप लोगों ने बहुत भुगता है, लेकिन अब हवा ऐसी चलेगी कि, कि आप लोग बिल्कुल ठीक रहेंगे." So, I mean, he has it on his mind. He understands. He knows that Kashmiri Pandits have, historically, they have suffered the persecution for past 700 years. I mean, he knows that. So Kashmiri Pandits should, they should definitely renew that faith and work with the government. And again, be united. There should be one united approach. If we have 500 opinions and 500 directions, we'll not be anywhere. We'll just basically will be wiped out as a Kashmiri Pandit community. We'll not be there in another 10, 20 years. So we have to do that. And I'm very proud of our overseas associations who have kept this culture going. They celebrate their festivals, the Shivratris, the Diwali, and the younger kids, our youth, at least in the US, I can tell you that they're very much in touch. And they're more knowledgeable than I was when I was at their age, growing up in Kashmir. They're more
The number of
knowledgeable.
temples, what you have in the east and west coast all over,
Yeah, they're more knowledgeable about Hinduism. They're more knowledgeable about what's happening to us than we are. So I think what we have to do is just give the baton, trust our younger people, trust our organizations, and and support the government, because if we doubt the present government, then I think there's no other government in the world which will come that we'll be able to trust. I mean, this is the only government right now which is really trying to revive Hinduism, and not at the cost of minorities, as our enemies keep on saying. I mean, 80% Hindus have been living like a minority in India, and we all know that. Let's face that. And now, if we call ourselves a Hindu country, what's wrong? I mean, America doesn't call itself a Muslim country or a Hindu country, They are a Christian country. I mean, UK doesn't, no other country is worried about, putting a mask and appease the minorities. I mean, let the minorities live freely, but let them live under the, under the terms, and they can't just go and start praying in the middle of the road. You can't have these triple talaqs. You can't have the things which we have seen have made a mess of their own community. The Muslims also have been suffering because of all these religious leaders. So if a change is coming, why resist it? Why oppose it? Become part of it. Because a strong Hindu nation, as India should have been, I think that will be better for the world. It will be better for everyone. So that's all I'm going to say.
Christian Kemo agrees with you. Things are changing for sure in Kashmir. The change may be slow, but it is steady.
They're
I think
changing.
he talked
Absolutely.
about, yes.
You're very right. They are definitely in the positive direction. And I'm very hopeful that, God willing, when we again talk next year, we'll definitely reaffirm this, and we'll say, yeah, didn't we say this last year? things are improving. They're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. When you visit Kashmir next time, maybe you can do a show from there.
Absolutely.
We will look forward to doing that sometime next year, as you mentioned.
I'm very
Thank you,
grateful.
Jeevanji,
Thank
for
you.
a wonderful time. And we slightly exceeded our time, but you wanted to do in 30 minutes, but I was sure that it won't happen in 30 minutes.
I really enjoyed it, and you are so wonderful. Thank you so much, and
Thank
looking
you so
forward
much.
to visit Chennai. Thank you.
Sure. We look forward to seeing you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Namaste to
And
you
we'll
and
have you
all the
again in
listeners.
our series soon.
Okay. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you,
Namaste.
sir.
Namaste.
Namaste ji. Thank you, viewers. We managed to finish within 1 hour, but slightly exceeded. It was a wonderful discussion we had with Jeevan Zutshi. We touched upon many aspects. Finally, talked about unity among different organizations, which is, I think, a very valid point. Unfortunately or fortunately, there was no hacking today. We last time I wrote to some people in the ministry. They probably reviewed all that, and they're working behind our streaming. So whenever truth is spoken here, I could see hacking taking place or people blocking messaging. That did not happen today. Thanks to whoever helped us doing that, and we will continue to have the support. We again thank Kanchi Mutt and all the channels for streaming through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Kamakoti.tv, and as always, our VDSP for streaming. Dinamalar, of course. Dinamalar also carried out an article about this yesterday. They continue to provide great support and information about our series. We have a program lined up till December, And next Saturday, we will have Krishan Ji joining us again. He made a wonderful presentation last week, and we couldn't complete, or it exceeded more than an hour or so. So we will see you again, same time next Saturday. That is going to be October 1st. Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara.